So here are some of the problems that we're living with as a result of those decisions back 9 years ago. We live in a world now of financial repression, and if you're not aware of it, the chances are you will be in the fullness of time. There is a war on your cash, a war on our cash occurring. It is increasingly difficult to transact using physical currency. The authorities would prefer us to use exclusively electronic money, and on the basis that they can manage to trap us all in a purely electronic money system, they can then impose whatever negative interest rates they like without fear of redress. So we published a book, The War on Cash, a few years ago, well ahead of when this became mainstream discussion in the media. We seem to be living in a world of permanent quantitative easing. Now, I think that the QE perspective is particularly, the QE topic is particularly interesting. I suspect that QE was engineered to solve a debt crisis. It was designed to inflate away the value of the debt in real terms. So it's a slight awkwardness that QE seems to have actually been deflationary. We live, as we all know, in an environment of ultra-low bond yields. I would argue that bonds are uninvestable as an asset class today as a result. We live in a world of negative interest rates, particularly in the Eurozone. We live in a world of currency wars. Governments are actively competing with each other to devalue their currencies. Well, clearly they can't all succeed because it's a relative game. So perhaps we face in the future the possibility of helicopter money. Since the QE project has effectively failed to trigger the inflation that I suspect was behind it, was its intent, maybe we're going to end up with helicopter money parachuted directly into our bank accounts, perhaps with a limited time duration so that we have to spend it before it expires. It's a possibility. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Perhaps the governments of the world, the governments of the West, are so desperate that they actually reintroduce capital controls. Governments, when they need money, will go after it wherever they can. And bear in mind, capital controls were only rescinded in the UK as recently as 1979 under Margaret Thatcher. So it's not as if we've been living with free capital flows indefinitely. They're only a comparatively recent invention. Perhaps the future is going to be stagflationary. Perhaps it's going to be a bit like the 1970s. And along with flares and dodgy rock music, we also get a stagflationary mess. Possibly, one would like to think not probably, but possibly there's a complete reset of the entire monetary system, and we end up with some kind of hyperinflation as a result of too much perma QE and money printing. These problems are clearly huge potential issues for all of us as savers, as investors, as people trying to pass money down through the generations. Okay. So let's have a look at the bond market first. Just a snapshot of 10-year government bond yields from around the world. As you can see, they're not particularly high.